just poke somebody every 2 hours, blow hot heat on them and make them sweat, forget about it. And then wake them up 4 times or 5 times in the night. And then the next day say, so you ready to work out? You're like, well, you're getting the hand signal and it's not a pleasant one, right?
When I have questions about muscle protein or muscle protein synthesis, my go-to is Dr. Stuart Phillips, and he is here to answer questions, to look at a few myths that are going around in circles that you and I are in, and where we're listening to what is it that we should really be doing, what really matters and what doesn't on social media. Welcome back, Dr. Stuart Phillips.
Thanks for having me, Deborah. Pleasure to see you again.
Well, you too. And to all of our listeners, Dr. Phillips is no stranger to this show. And my hope is that this won't be his last. It's not his first, but let's hope it won't be his last. I know you're a little bit more busy now with the new role. It actually gave cause for concern. I was like, no, you're not going to do that because we need you doing the research.
Yeah. Well, the research hasn't stopped. It just meant that somebody else plans a lot of my day and tells me what I need to do and where I need to be. So, but it's all good. The research is still rolling along. So all good.
To all of my listeners who may have been living under a rock, maybe not exploring protein or muscle and longevity for as long as I have, tell them how you got your start. Because here's the truth. When protein and when muscle and resistance training for aging is talked about, your name is whispered in the room and quickly found in a study. Which happened first? Where did it begin?
Yeah, if I trace it all the way back, I did my undergraduate here at McMaster University, but I actually did it in biochemistry. So I was sort of trained a lot more in kind of understanding what goes on inside cells rather than human physiology. And it wasn't until my senior year when I took a course in nutritional biochemistry, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. And I had the opportunity to work in a lab, not by choice. I broke my leg playing rugby of all things, and so couldn't play rugby, and so had this time to get into a lab, and just fell in love with research. And at each twist and turn, when it was time to decide master's to a PhD or postdoc, I was like, I'm having too much fun doing this, and it gradually morphed into, first it was protein requirements in men and women with endurance athletes, and then I found a mentor that taught me all about muscle and sort of blended a lot of my worlds. I enjoyed sports and athletics, and then got the nutritional side, and that was almost 35 years ago now. So yeah, it's been great ever since. Still enjoy every day of it.
Because you've seen so many changes, I think you can understand where many of our listeners probably are. They've also seen changes. They've heard them, they've been conditioned now potentially more by social media. And that's really where I want to dive in. That for this interview, I think is where I started chasing you down, because I noticed that it seemed like you changed in terms of posting. I would almost say it feels like you're mad.
Oh yeah, maybe. Social media can make you mad, let's face it, right? But hopefully it doesn't drive you crazy. So that's I've been trying to sort of turn down the craziness thing and just keep it sort of middle of the road. And I'm like, no, I'm not engaging with that. But you could engage every day on social media for sure.
Right. Well, and what I want to point out is it feels like you're kind of angry because you're in the corner of this consumer and you want to be sure they get served the right information in order for all of us to be in the encouraging corner, to enable people to get started and not to be intimidated. And when you started, when I started, the statistics, unfortunately, are not much better. We're not doing a great job penetrating people who need it.
Right. No, I agree. Yeah, I think You and I probably know. I mean, it seems to me like there's a lot of war on social media over scorched earth. There's a lot of, how can we refine prescriptions for protein? How can we refine prescriptions for resistance training? When I point out to a lot of people is that 80% or more, because all we have is self-report of women don't lift any weights at all. So there's a big market that's, out there to be tapped, and for them, it's the engagement in the activity per se, as opposed to lift heavy, lift this weight, lift two. There's refinement of details, which I'm, happy to chat about. But the bigger battle to me is convincing women, because for so long, and I think it still exists today. You go over to the student gym, like right over here, there's the aerobics area, and it's mostly that's where the women are, and there's the lifting area, and that's where you find most of the guys. Now it's changing. It's shifting. But stereotypically, it's been, well, to control my weight, to do this. This is an aerobic based activity that I need to do. And I think now we appreciate that, to be strong, particularly for women as they get older, is I actually think it's not, unimportant, or relatively important to cardiovascular fitness, which you need too. But I think it actually, as you age, it actually gets even more important, particularly for women. So, yeah, that's a message I've been. So live and let live is the ethos, right? Like, let's get people lifting weights, and then we'll worry about, the fine tuning of the details.
Yeah, totally agree. And so let's jump in. There's probably this small handful of myths and I think confusion that women are worried about. And I do think even women who aren't started yet, are
Yeah.
way ahead of themselves worrying about details that may not matter as much because let's face it, when you're a virgin, I mean, you can hold hands and that's great, right?
Yeah.
Everything
Yeah.
counts. And so if we can look at exercise, let's first of all talk about kind of this lift heavy piece.
Right.
Um, So light, moderate, heavy weights. How do
Yeah.
they stack up in terms of, and we could break this into how do they stack up in terms of helping build muscle mass and or muscle
Yeah. Right. So you and I have talked about this before, and I think the research now, like, the guidelines, that the NSCA talks about, the guidelines that any agency has to talk about, and I can say, fingers crossed, that ACSM soon, because we're part of writing up these revised guidelines, will have to say that, lighter weights, and, everybody goes like, what's light and what's heavy? So the traditional heavier prescription has been 80% of what you can maximally lift at one time, lifted, to close to fatigue. So 8 to 10 to maybe 12 repetitions. Work that, not that we did, lots of people have done it, and maybe we sort of ground the axle, quite a bit on it, with lighter weights finishing in the sort of, 20 plus repetitions, has the same effect on muscle in terms of muscle growth. So if you want to preserve muscle, if you want to gain muscle, the repetition range that we now consider to be effective is much wider than it used to be. It used to be this was the sweet spot, but that's not true.
everybody needs to start light. And why I'm talking about heavy, knowing the best way to start is light anyway, and to
Yeah.
progress your way up. And some of us are going to say, no, I have to stop here. Here's my place. This is my
Right.
box. And others may continue and or choose to or choose not to. And yet now we've defined I still have a lot of ways I can manipulate the weight, maybe more time under tension, not
Yeah.
necessarily going heavier or adding power, a speed component.
Yep.
And I
Yep.
still can achieve what I want.
Yeah, no, you're spot on, and I think one of the things that's maybe confused people is that, progression is necessary. Like, you can't just, if you start out and you find lifting 5 pound weights difficult, but then you get stronger and you're like, oh, well, I can do lots of this. Then, you're not going to continue to get the benefit and the adaptation if you keep lifting 5 pound weights, right? So I think then everybody says, well, you need progressive overload, and they underline the word load. So the progression is always sort of taken to be, I need to add more load. And not that's a great way to progress. So you go from 5 to 10. And then you find that really challenging. So maybe you go to 7.5. I don't know. But you could progress it by training twice a week if you're only training once. I mean, that's another form of just stimulating the system a little bit more, and you will get adaptation with that. Now, most people are like, oh, I don't have the time. I'm like, okay, fine. So, load is the one thing that we have. But if you can't progress, you can't keep progressing. I mean, there's always sort of a cap, a limit. Even when you were younger, you got to a point where strength plateaued and you just couldn't lift anymore. And I think most people find that they get to a certain weight that if they try to lift heavier, that, yeah, this, and it's not so much their muscle. They go, my joint hurts, my elbow, my wrist, my shoulder, my hip, my knee. And I'm in that camp too. So don't get me, right? There's no shame in that at all. So back it off, and the training goal, for a lot of people who are taking up weightlifting, maybe a little bit later in life, haven't done it, is actually, well, to keep training. Because if there's one thing that definitely predicts, future success and reduce risk of everything, it's consistency of practice. And so, if that's the message, then by all means, do everything within your power so that you can come back and do it again. Maybe not tomorrow, but definitely next week or a little bit later in the week. And it's a habit that sustains itself. And that's a tough one to master if you've never done it before, for sure.
Yeah, that was a great comment right there, by the way. Maybe not tomorrow, because I wanted to ask you about so
Yeah.
so frequently you're asked about, heavy, light, how many repetitions, but I've not heard you asked a lot about recovery. And
Yeah.
we're talking to a group of women, and one of the reasons I hesitate is when we reached a point where we've got 1,000 women regularly in
Yeah. Yeah.
number collectively, again, this wasn't an if, it was a when are these women going to reach a point of kind of an adrenal fatigue, and I know that's a lay term, look,
Mm.
not a lot
Yeah.
of people like, but it's, life is throwing them everything in the middle of their
Sure.
life. The hormones
Sure.
change. They're trying
Yeah.
to exercise, trying to diet. It's all they hit a point where we're exhausting them by exercise. Even
Yeah.
what is a good amount of exercise is a
Yeah.
tip.
Yeah.
And recovery sometimes takes longer than it did pre-menopause. Speak into that a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Like a lot to unpack there, but I mean, I think the point I make to athletes when I'm talking to the young men and women at the university campus here is that I tell them, all the training you're doing, that's awesome because that's forcing the adaptation. But I said, all the good stuff happens actually when you're not training, when you're recovering and you're eating right and you're sleeping right and everything else like this. And they all sort of nod, and I don't know that they really get it until like a little later in life. And there's, you've got kids, you've got a job, you've got all of these things that are co-pressuring you, and you're trying to find time, trying to make time and everything else. And power to you if you can, because it's an amazing juggling act to pull all of that stuff off. And then I think for women, and again, no lived experience, but having a partner who actually scientifically and career wise beats me hands down. I'm her. She's my boss's boss at work here. So just to give you a chance to know where she sits in the ladder, right? Watching her go through menopause, and sort of just taking stock of the toll it takes on your sleep, your mood, just your general brain space to find time to do, well, forget it, anything, organize your day, maybe for some folks. So I think when you put all of that together, and you're looking at a body that's changing, and you're thinking, I don't want to, I don't want this weight gain. I don't want it. So well, you're just going to ratchet it up. You're going to do more, or you're going to jump in and do something that, you never would have considered doing before. And it must be impossible, I think, for some women to find the time and energy to do all of that stuff. And, I'll be honest with you, Deborah, you and I, we were I was on social media and I was putting some stuff out there, and I said, "Well, here's the data on hormone replacement therapy, or menopause hormone therapy we call now, um, and what it does to lean mass, and it doesn't do anything." And you said it might give some women space, and I was like, you know what? Like that's an interesting thought. Like it, and again, hand on heart, never occurred to me. But you're right. The alleviation, the mitigation of the symptoms associated with menopause, and the truth is that I don't disagree, but that study's never actually been done, and I think it would actually be great to do something really simple and just say women on or not on receiving menopause hormone therapy, and are women better able to cope with things to find time for exercise? So the hormone therapy is an enabler of the activity, and so we've got a local obstetrician gynecologist who is really interested in this. We're trying to get her on board with exercise as part of it. And she's a believer, but she's sort of like she's front line on the hormone side to say, you know what, let's see what this does for women because you get symptom relief and maybe that's what gives you the mental. And I think sleep is actually I think it's critical
Yeah.
because just poke somebody every 2 hours and blow hot heat on them and make them sweat. Forget about it, and then wake them up 4 times or 5 times in the night, and then the next day say, "So you ready to work out?" You're like, "Well, you're getting the hand signal and it's not a pleasant one, right?" And so I said, I said to you before, I'm like, this happened to men. We'd have commissioned a global panel to solve this. we, there would be stop the press. We got to solve this shit. So power to the women out there who are saying, enough. This is it. We've got to figure this stuff out. So it's time for sure.
I want to ask you this before I let you go, coming back to protein specifically. And very recently, the window opened up. Timing seems less important if
Yeah.
guys have good habits around the clock. And, if you eat before or don't, that's really up to you. If you eat immediately after or don't, that isn't going to make or break the benefit of from that session. Tell me if it's wrong or not. And I want to come back to you with a hypothesis of my own anecdotally. Out.
Okay. All right. I love it. I love it. Okay. So rewind the clock 20 years. Guy named John Ivy wrote a book called Nutrient Timing. And when I was probably 20 years ago, would have at least been like maybe just starting my faculty position, or it was a little bit before that. There was a lot of work showing that, you know, exercise sensitized your muscle to nutrients. The primary one at the time, because the whole world was focused on carbohydrate, and it was all about getting carbohydrates back to replenish muscle glycogen so you could exercise again. Protein was like, I mean, protein wasn't even on the map. And Dr. Ivy did a bunch of really good work in this area. A lot of it driven by rodent studies, but even some human work as well. And this whole idea is that exercise sensitizes your muscle to nutrients, and then you have this window of opportunity to eat carbohydrate, replenish glycogen, and it sort of was extended then to be you eat protein, and that stimulates protein synthesis, which is true, and that results in greater replenishment of glycogen, greater stimulation of muscle protein, and that's better. Um, so time advances, people do some studies, and one, protein is important, timing is important. Actually, no, it's not as much. And then, and it exists in a lot of other fields too. It exists in arthritis research with a lot of nutraceutical supplements, serotonin reuptake inhibitors, and depression. The first studies were like, here's the big effect. Then everything sort of gradually moved back towards, well, it's an effect, but it's nowhere near as big as we thought. And that's exactly what happened with the window. The window, seemingly, I say the window closed, but actually the window just got bigger and bigger and bigger, right? To your point. And it's open for 24 hours. So this window of opportunity to replenish your carbohydrate stores or get protein in to get the benefit of the workout that you've done is it's big. Let's just say it's maybe 24 hours long. And I have a friend named Sean Arendt who's at the University of South Carolina, and he wrote a great narrative review, but I think he's spot on. He called it the garage door as opposed to the window. So with the implication of the size of a garage door as opposed to a window. So I think, you eat before, power to you if you like to do that, but it's not necessary. It's sufficient. It works. You eat post, you like to eat immediately post. And there's a lot of trainers say, but I like to start recovery right away. I'm like, go for it. And lots of high-end sports teams will have a recovery space, and a lot of NCAA teams have a recovery dining hall for athletes. Pragmatically, it makes sense. These people are close to the top of the pyramid, and those things might begin to, impact their performance the next day. Or if you work out in the morning, and we've got lots of two-a-day athletes going right now, and you're working out again, or you're playing or something, later in the day. For those folks, it probably does make a difference. For the mere mortals out there, the week, myself included, not that big a deal. So the window's open, get your nutrients in, exercise, still keep doing the thing, but that muscle stays sensitive for a really long time.
Okay. So here's my theory.
Okay.
So
Go for it.
I, I totally respect that. Number one, and I think hopefully to every listener, it empowers you and helps you feel a little less stress about, the need to get something in. If you don't feel
Mm.
like your gut tolerates it, or you just feel better without, and this window that, you're stressed about having to eat, it just relaxed
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah.
So the rules are okay.
Well, there's a lot of young guys in the gym that are walking around with a shaker, and you can tell they're pretty. You know, and I hate to pick on the young guys because that was me at one point in time. But it's like we haven't learned at something, and I'm like, I've yet to see, be flat out honest, like a woman walk with a shaker. So I'm just saying, I'm like, there's a wisdom of crowds going on there somewhere. So I get it.
Totally true. All
Yeah.
right. We have a lot of women here who grew up in the 70s and the 80s. And, we were very privy to that eat less, exercise more.
Yeah. Yeah.
So here's just as a coach who's watched for over 4 decades, and we take an inventory when people come in of what's going on. They're not maybe an athlete competing, but life is pretty stressful. Life is a
Sure.
workout for them, and the
Yep.
workout is the workout. And for women who are under eating, often more
Mhm.
often than overeating, at least the ones who actively come in and are seeking a coach, that has been my experience. The limiter is maybe under eating overall or under eating
Mhm.
for
Yep.
both. And that sometimes coupling the purpose of let's consume something around this workout because you're doing
Yeah.
two
Yep.
good things. It just mentally or psychologically has it sits better with them because they can see
Mhm.
purpose. Now we have
Yep.
them more regularly taking a dose of, higher quality food because they've done this good thing. They're going to make better choices at the
Mhm.
meal.
Mhm.
How does that sit with you?
Yeah, you're not the first. So first, I get it. I totally get it, and I also get the ethos of women for a long, long time, as you said. A no hack on Jane Fonda. Like did tons for fitness and women and everything. Like great role model, but there was no role model in the 70s or 80s for women as a woman who was strong, who lifted weights. The role model for if you were a guy was easy. It was Arnold Schwarzenegger, it was Sylvester Stallone, but no woman wanted to look like that. So there was no strong women role models. There's a lot more now, and I would flat out say is that and love it or hate it, and I know a lot of people will throw buns at me for this one, but CrossFit did a ton for getting women to understand that it was okay to be strong and normalize strength training a little bit for women. And I think it did, if it did nothing else, it got women into gyms and lifting more than any other sport for sure. So fast forward to today, and the women that you're talking about, learned that the way to lose weight and the way to keep yourself slim was to do an aerobics workout. Was Richard Simmons, Jane Fonda, and then what you did was you just ate less and less food because that was the answer, right? Um, Pile on top of that, you didn't sleep well last night. You've got kids, you've got a job, you're trying to balance that against career ambitions and everything. I think it becomes ridiculously difficult to, fuel yourself adequately and feel like you're ready to perform the next day. So you're not the first coach to tell me that this is what they see. And I think uh, women, uh, like the ones that you're training and people who work with women in the age bracket in particular you're talking about, find that a common occurrence. And I don't disagree with the strategy of, a meal timing issue around the workout being a good sort of, I'll call it a point of learning, if you like, to say this is what's going to help you here, not the, restrict and just drink coffee and don't eat it. Like that's going to, that's eventually you're going to crash and you're going to find that actually that makes everything else that you're trying to do worse, particularly your sleep and everything else like that. So I don't dismiss it out of hand. I think that the strategy is a solid one. I do think that there's, another. I I think there's a research question in there to be tested because I think that the occasion does present itself to say to a woman, "Look, you've just done this for yourself. Here's the add-on, the bolt-on thing that you're going to do that's going to make what you've just done better." And it's an opportunity to fuel yourself appropriately. So I flat out get it, and I don't disagree. I think that it's the timing of that meal probably is scorched earth. I don't think that it's has to be pre, it has to be post. But let's just put a bracket around and say if this is exercise, if you feel better getting it here and you can tolerate that, power to you. If you get it here, power to you because it's around the exercise where the window is important, not immediately pre or immediately post. It's big, right? So, but good hypothesis. I'd go with that one.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time, sharing your wisdom.
Sure.
Forward to your posts. We will put everywhere to connect with you below. Is there one place in particular you'd like to send people?
I've spent more time on Instagram these days than anywhere else. Mackkinprof, MACKNPROF. X, or formerly Twitter, drives me crazy. I still use Facebook because I'm old school. I'm on TikTok, but I don't understand that platform at all. It seems mad to me, but there you go.
Well, can you dance or point or no?
Yeah, that's what I can't do. And my son tells me all the time, "You need to do more stuff, Dad." And I'm like, "No, like Dad can't do that. Dad's a scientist." He just talks facts. He goes, "That's boring." I'm like, "Sorry."
There you go. Well, we all found it very interesting. Thank you again for your time.
My pleasure, Denner. Thank you very much.